It's been a really wonderful day. Your brains are chock full, so you really don't have to think much. We just get to have fun, and we get to talk about, we get to reminisce. That's part of what this is about tonight. And my name is Becky Robinson. I'm the president and founder of Alley Cat Allies. And wow. Whatever. And I can tell you all that really means is just don't walk down an alleyway on the way to your birthday party. So you learn the hard way. So what I want to talk about tonight, we kind of talked a lot about where we're at today. And you heard a lot from Ryan today. He kicked off the whole conference, and Ellen. And you know, folks, this is quite amazing where we're at today. And part of what I want to do tonight is I want us to really stop and think and feel what this is like, where we're at, and what collectively we have done in this country, and how we've been followed by other countries. Now, when it comes to the issue, one of the issues that Alley Cat Allies works on, we're a cat group. In case you don't know, we're not a feral cat group, we're a cat group. And we're an animal rights group, and we have core values that I'll talk about in a minute. But just in case, does anybody not know Alley Cat Allies? We started when I was about 2, or was it 3? I forget. And we went down an alleyway, I did, by myself, and very, very, very briefly, I grew up with a family that started a humane society in Kansas, and so from the time I was however high I could be lifted over a fence and be told to run over and unchain dogs and give them water, that was me. That was my life. That was my entire life. And then at some point when I was in the middle of Alley Cat Allies, we were several years into this, and of course the same thing like we all heard about earlier today. You know, we had no money and we had nobody that cared, and whine, whine, hand wringing. And I told my brother, I said, how did I end up like this? And he started laughing. It was basically stamped on my forehead when I came out of the womb that this was probably what we were going to be doing, because this is all we ever did. We were the unofficial wildlife rehabbers in Kansas. We changed, my aunt changed the ordinances, so there was, you know, basic minimum standards of how an animal should be kept. Like, you know, dogs outside should have water, for example. So this was my life, but fast forward, I was going to go on and do something real with my life, right? And, you know, when you think about life's work and whatever has happened to Ellen and Ryan and many of you in this room, Eileen sitting here, we kind of have to think this is our life work, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What are we doing? We're talking about individual animals, we're talking about programs to save, to increase life-saving, live release rate, all this jargon. We're changing society. We're not helping just the animals. We're changing society for people. We're bettering society as a whole. We have morals and values and ethics that I think a lot of Americans, most Americans, agree with us. They just don't know about this. I mean, how many people answer the phones at your shelter or your facility or your rescue group? Anybody answer the phones from the public? When you tell them, they call you up and say, I've got this cat and he's a little skitty, she must be abused. I mean, every single one of you could write the script of what people say about feral, you know, unsocialized cats. They're just not socialized to us. They're socialized to each other. And that's what we're going to talk about. I went down this alleyway. I got kind of sucked into trying to do this program. We went and I worked at PETA. I went and collected, I had just left PETA, and I went to a little letter stuffing party. Remember when we did mail? And so we went to this letter stuffing party, and I raised, I think it was $84, and somebody gave me a carrier. And of course, really, seriously, that was going to help me? And so, but little did I know. And so we started what was called Trap, Neuter, Release, and that was being carried out in the United Kingdom, and there was already a videotape in the United Kingdom, so we were not the leaders in this. Let's not fool ourselves. We're pretty proud of ourselves today, but at that time, the United Kingdom and many other countries were well into Trap, Neuter, Return, Trap, Neuter, Release. They had completely spayed and neutered colonies like the colony at Fitzroy Square. Anybody know about the Fitzroy Square colony? Somebody please tell me. They're the most famous group of cats in the world. They are the colony that T.S. Eliot wrote he based the Broadway musical. Thank you. And today, when we started, this was in 1990, and when we started July of 1990, and we incorporated in 1991 on October 16th, and that's now called National Feral Cat Day. And today we have 500,000 supporters. Now why? This shouldn't be a surprise to us. Yeah, we worked hard and we can all pat ourselves on the back, but the fact is, there were people who called us up and said, there's a name for what I'm doing. They'd been doing it for a long time. They had been on their own, socializing the little kittens and finding a veterinarian that would work with them and pay $500 for a spay. That's what I paid when we went that first year, $500, $525 I think it was. And so what we value, I wrote this down, this is one of our core values. One of our core values at Alley Cat Allies is that we value all life. We value our impact on the environment, on sentient beings, our relationship with each other. So when we're thinking about what we're doing, and we're going out and talking here about, just like what the opening session said, we want to go home and we want to start these programs. We want to start them tomorrow. We need like the toolkits. We need the guidebooks. But really, what we have to keep in mind is what's driving all of this is why we're doing it. And why we're doing this for cats is because we care about our values and morals and ethics and the impact on society. Not just for the cats, but for the people, for all animals. So this is me when we started 25 years ago, and that's what we want to look at today, is how far we've come. I don't know who that person is. Of course, it's the same hair color as it is today. And I love the sign that I put together. I worked long and hard on that. And the first George Bush was in office. Does anybody even remember him? Justin Bieber wasn't born yet. Facebook wasn't even a thing yet. Face what? And cell phones, we didn't have any of the tools that we have now. When we opened our office in 1999, the first thing we did was buy a fax machine. We only had one employee, and the fax machine sat on the floor because we didn't have any money for furniture. But the fact is that was my tool. Everybody now uses we're sending each other's texts here today and reading our emails and PowerPoints. I loathe PowerPoints just because I can't figure out how to use them. And so we used every tool that we had then. And what we were doing was we were trying to get people to understand what we were dealing with. We have 125 years of this entrenched animal control, just the name of it. Like, we're going to pass laws. Last time I checked, cats still can't read. Or if they can, do you really think they're going to abide by anybody's freaking human laws? Any of them? And so the fact is, we had to get people to understand nature. We have lost touch with nature. Isn't there, has somebody seen the ad about Conservation International? It's that nature doesn't need people. And these cats, the best thing that we can do for them, all people had been taught, was that there's a shelter, a square building somewhere, that we were taught these animals must go to. We were all, the collective we, the public, society, here in the United States, not in parts of Europe, not in the UK. When you adopt a cat in the UK, what do they ask you? Do you have a cat flap? They don't call them pet doors. Do you have a cat flap? Do you have a garden? They ask you that when you walk out the door. How many of us have witnessed, maybe not lately, but years ago I witnessed them kicking people out, that if they didn't go through the right thing and say the right words, and it was almost like a gotcha game when you adopted an animal. Like, if you didn't, I think I'm supposed to declaw. Yeah, I'll declaw. And then it's like, no, we don't adopt you. What did I say wrong? Like, nobody even knew declawing was, that this is what they thought they were supposed to do. So having cats as a pet was the only thing that was acceptable. Cats outside were not acceptable. That's what we found when we called. I told the people that were helping me, you're going to call the shelter and this is what they're going to say. And then they called me back and they said, you know what, that's what they said, but they yelled at. They didn't just say it, they yelled at us because we called them to see if we could borrow a trap and get some help, and we were going to try to find a vet. And of course, we were just crazy. To be humane. So cats are the only species, the only considered domesticated species today that scientists, researchers, biologists, experts that are studying this, and we can talk about this all evening, but the fact is, if you want to know more, go to alleycat.org or ask Kayla. I'm here tonight with Kayla, if you want to raise your hand, from Alley Cat Allies at the National Cat Help Desk. And and cats domesticated themselves because they wanted to be around us because, they're narcissistic. I mean, I didn't say that. Because they're smart. Because they're very smart. This was the colony. So what I want to ask you, how many of you got up and fed cats today? How many of you asked somebody and made arrangements because you're too far away to feed the cats and somebody else is feeding your cats? Right, see? Okay, so now, how many of you fed cats at one time, like me, and it was a colony that was neutered and returned, and you probably socialized and adopted out all the kittens or took them home? How many now have that colony that's now gone or dwindled to just 1 or 2 or 3? Anybody? That is a colony. This is the alleyway in Adams Morgan. This is where I walked down on my birthday, July 7th, 1990, July 7th, 1990. How could I ever forget it? And stopped because I saw these beautiful cats. Look how healthy they are. And some of you that just went to the previous session, they talk about the body weight and the condition. These cats were a 5, 6, whatever on that scale of 1 to 9. And so we eventually got them to a veterinarian that worked with us. It was awful, the process, because they would only take one at a time, and it was a lot of money, and we didn't have money, and I was waiting tables at the time. So this colony is no longer, this is the point of Trap Neuter Return. And there are entire colonies. Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, same story. A couple women went to have lunch along the riverfront where there were like little cafes, and they saw cats in Newburyport, and they decided they were going to do something. Long story short, they trapped and neutered, was I think maybe, and I'm sorry I don't remember the numbers, we can look it up, 300 and some cats, it might have been more. And there was a few years ago, one cat left, and there were 6 feeders for this one cat, Zorro, fighting over who was going to feed this cat. And Zorro died, and they put a press release out. And the mayor of Newburyport said, what are we going to do about all the rats? So radical, that was radical. We were pushed back by every national group. I don't even want to take the time right now to tell you how hard we struggled with those that now endorse Trap Neuter Return. And that's a whole other evening's talk. But now today, what was radical, what was bizarre, what was considered something like, no way, right? No way was this ever going to happen. These national groups that are now on our side, on this cat side, whose mission is to protect animals, stopped Trap Neuter Return. It didn't matter. It was America. It wasn't Alley Cat Allies. It was America. It was people. It was tens of thousands of women and men and young people and old people of every color and every shape and size and background, that they were going to care for these cats. People are going to always feed cats. And we will never, never, ever not have cats, folks. Do you think that this is such an American human arrogance, that we think that we're going to solve this? It's not the problem. The cats are not the problem. We have had cats living around us for 10,000 years. So this idea that we're going to fix this, we have got to redefine the problem. We have to talk about this to people when we talk about this issue in a different way. We have to say to them, the cats have always been here. The cats came over on the ships that we came over on, and guess what? They weren't in carriers. I assure you of that. So we have to rethink all of this. Today there are hundreds of municipalities. There's, we can't keep up with them, every single week or every couple weeks there's a new ordinance. 450 is what today's count. So this is the Atlantic City Boardwalk. Anybody been to Atlantic City, New Jersey, to the famous boardwalk? And of course, usually you go there for shows and gambling. But anyway, I'd never been there. I had heard all about the cats, and we started this project. Here, can you just push the button in the corner there in the black? There you go.
The next time you're in Atlantic City, take a break from the casinos and shopping and have a look at the boardwalk's permanent residents living quietly under the busy planks. Home of the famous boardwalk cats, Atlantic City is host to feral cat colonies. Feral cat colonies are family groups and are closely bonded. Alley Cat Allies has been caring for these cats as part of a city-endorsed trap-neuter-return program since the year 2000. The cats live healthy, natural lives in their outdoor homes. These feral cats, like all feral cats, are not socialized to people and are not adapted to living indoors. With Trap Neuter Return, the cats are humanely trapped, then neutered and vaccinated by a veterinarian. This improves their lives by eliminating the stresses of mating and pregnancy. It also prevents future litters of kittens, which stabilizes the colony. While under anesthesia, the tip of a feral cat's ear is clipped. This is called an ear tip and identifies the cat as neutered and vaccinated. After the surgery, the cats are returned to the boardwalk where they are looked after by a group of Alley Cat Allies staff and dedicated volunteers. The boardwalk cats are given fresh food and water regularly and have comfortable shelters for the colder months. Alley Cat Allies host regular cleanup days to remove litter and debris in order to keep the colony habitats clean. To learn more about Alley Cat Allies Boardwalk Cats Project and find out how you can help, visit www.alleycat.org/Atlantic City.
So you can get back to the PowerPoint, but can you believe this? And now I understand that there are programs and groups all over this country that have programs that, by the way, this population of cats has dropped, and the original size is now 29% of what the original size was. Their average age is 12. So we're going to start tracking because they're going to start dying one by one, and there will be, just like Merrimack River, there will be fewer and fewer cats. And so this is not unusual. We're finding out now, 25 years into this, this is something that there's whole Facebook pages for these colonies of cats, like the Jetty Cats and the Project Bay Cats. And so how did we get here? We got here because we do still live in a democracy. I'll just newsflash in case you didn't know, it still is. That has not been taken away from us. It feels like it some days. But Kayla passed out. If you look at your table, you now have your own personal First Amendment that says, besides what we often think of, the freedom of speech, freedom of press, right to peaceably assemble, and petitioning our government to redress our grievances. And so when we look at this is important, and this is why what's been set up in this country is the cats and the people who help them for 100 years have had our rights and the cats' rights taken away. And this means people who have cared for cats and have wanted to start these programs have actually been harassed and pushed back by our local governments, probably 3,500 local governments. That's if you look up the association that tracks those. Social change is good. This is what we want. It's our right to change society, to have our society the way that we want it. In Bethesda and in Arlington, I live in Arlington, Virginia, and I work in Bethesda, and I walked into one restaurant in Arlington, and about a few weeks later, into Bethesda, and long before there were any ordinances ever passed, the little famous diner that I go to, and the little restaurant right underneath where Alley Cat Allies is, because it's just so close, we always go there, and they have a veggie burger. And there's no more smoking in these restaurants. When I grew up, the very first job that I had, we smoked at our desks. I didn't. People smoked at their desks. So this is social change. And just quickly, it just is that we're not just helping each other one by one or teaching, we're organizing. This is a collective, what we've created all over this country. But the fact remains is that we've got an entrenched system. We have a system that has created this, that's the norm, the status quo. And we are turning that around. That's very hard. Hey, we've made a lot of progress. What, in the 25, 30 years that all of us have been at this? And we've had a lot of new surge of interest and help and blood and smarts, Ryan, Ellen, all these people that have brains, all of you in this room. But the fact is, it's still the #1 documented threat to cats is going to a shelter. I just read Operation Catnip's email last night. They're promoting the fact that they're gearing up for their spay neuter. Anybody know Operation Catnip in Gainesville, Dr. Julie Levy? Right, well, if you don't know of them, look them up. Operation Catnip, they're in Gainesville. Dr. Julie Levy has published, and she's the one that has researched. She's a DVM, PhD, how many other things behind her name? Lots, too many to remember. And she's published, and she's the one that's published and said what we already know today. You don't need to test them for FELV, FIV. They're very healthy animals. Peer-reviewed journal articles in JAVMA. Look her up, Levy. So I was reading her little thing that they put out last night, and this is what it said. Taking cats and kittens to the shelter is almost never a good option. Community cats can live long, happy, healthy outdoor lives after they are freed from the cycle of reproduction. This is a DVM that's writing this. This is an expert that's been at this for almost 25 years. Very well respected. Runs a shelter medicine program. We have shelter medicine that wasn't even a curriculum. It wasn't even a focus. It wasn't even a respected field. Shelter medicine it is today. There is no such thing as humane euthanasia in a shelter for a feral or fearful cat. This is an animal control director, a previous animal control officer saying this. She's now a DVM. And if you look up her name, and she's on YouTube, and I think she's given a webcast making the change for a paradigm shift, that's at Maddie's. If you go to Maddie's Fund website. What we have done here in this country, this whole idea that we have all these cats, and somehow it just started, and it's the people who feed them. No, it's not. That's not the issue. We have always had cats. What we have had is with your tax dollars, my money, your money, and with the policies in place, the status quo has been to round up and kill. Probably, if you conservatively estimate, in the decades that there have been rounding up and killing, that there have been these sweeps, millions upon millions, tens of millions of cats have been intentionally killed. Not euthanized, that's been co-opted. We all know the definition of euthanasia, right? What is the definition of it's for animals who are ill, beyond any hope of recovery, sick, injured. These are healthy. And a cat with ringworm is not going to be euthanized. If you shoot chemical blue juice, Euthazol is one of the chemicals, one of the products, that is intentionally killing that cat. Ringworm is treatable. So this vacuum effect, everybody knows the vacuum effect? That's what our tax dollars were going. You remove animals, and it remains the population of cats to continue to breed, reproduce, and go right back into the numbers. That's all we've been doing. That's our animal control. Big, fat, publicly funded vacuum effect. Over and over and over, year after year, decade after decade. So whose problem? Is this something just happened? This is a surprise to us that we have populations of cats? TNR works. You're going to go and stabilize those populations, like in Adams Morgan in Washington, D.C., at Merrimack River, at the Jetty cats, and the list goes on and on and on. Century of this, more than a century of it, trenched dogmas, punitive laws that if you feed a cat, do you know that there are still laws on the books? We're not done yet. We have changed laws, but I estimate we estimated Alley Cat Allies that we might be about 20% into affecting the total number of cities and governments, county governments. And let's be real here, folks. There are people whose job it is to kill animals. Lots of those people. I was a social worker, I was a licensed social worker practicing in the state of Kansas for a decade before I moved out of there. I had to get out of social work. But the fact of the matter is this job, what we're paying, what people's job is to take the lives of animals, it's killing them too. And there's very few conferences, every conference I go to, there's somebody that tells me there is an animal control or shelter worker who has taken their lives. Social change. This is a social ill. This system that we've set up that's behind closed doors, it's not transparent, we have to fight for that to open up those doors. This is a social ill that needed to be changed. It was killing animals and killing people. The good news is there are new young people, that's the whole headline tonight of, century of this, a quarter of a century of Alley Cat Allies, more than a quarter of a century of this, all these collective movements. It's one big movement, right? There are young people, Christine, I don't think she's even 30, she's in San Diego. I just met her 2 weeks ago, and she's single-handedly because she realized that when she went and pet the kitties at the Humane Society, because that was her job, she was a volunteer, and she spent a few hours there every single weekend, she wanted to know what those cats coming in traps was doing and what they did with them, and they told her. And she did her own little research, and she started a group, and she has that group now, and she single-handedly implemented in just a few months a shelter neuter return, a trap neuter return program for that shelter. And she went and trained the front desk people, she trained the officers, and they're carrying it out, and she's going on to another shelter. This is what we need, folks. This is not going to happen with more Alley Cat Allies. We can hire all the wonderful Kaylas in the world, but this is going to be community, it's going to be the Christines of the world. It's going to be those people that Eileen's daughter is going to be doing this. She doesn't know it yet, right? Don't break the news to her yet. She knows, okay. This is in San Antonio. 10 years ago, I went there and I watched. I stood there in the back of animal control and watched 250 mother cats and kittens be brought in, and every single one of them were killed inside of one day. That wasn't even 12 hours. It was about 10 hours. Of course, they, just like somebody said earlier, they wait till, 7 o'clock at night, and then they start killing them all. So that they waited, all these kittens. And I did the same year I was in Chicago, and the same thing I witnessed. I walked in and did a tour of the shelter, and the front room was about the size of this middle room here, the front, the lobby, the entrance. And I went to do the tour, and I came back, and it was about an hour and a half later, and they had wheeled banks, these empty cage banks, they're on wheels, and they're 3 up, and every single one of them was full of kittens or baby kittens or neonatals that they were going to have to kill right away, because if you have neonatal kittens, what do you have to do with them? You have to feed them immediately. Who's going to feed them that night? Within hours, you have to feed them. So this is in San Antonio. I was just there yesterday with Diane, and this is the signs that they've posted all over the campus of the animal control. Has anybody been to San Antonio? Anybody from San Antonio? Yeah. So ACS, which is the Animal Control Services, that's their acronym, Colony Cat Work Zone, and then what does it say on there? I can't read it. What does it say, Kayla?
I'm blind as well. Even at rest, we protect our ACS shelter friends from creepy crawlies of all sorts.
We are working. Please do not disturb us. And this is the working cat I saw about, 100 yards away. Please. So, but there we are. I walked into one of the main buildings on ACS campus, and look what was right at the front door. A cat shelter. And that's the entrance of the Animal Care Services. This is light years. This isn't just inside of a decade from when I was there and witnessed what I witnessed. But the fact remains, guys, that there are those that think that you've got to kill off the cats to save the birds and the wildlife. That's why we put this literature out. You can get some of it. It's on the table there, and more at our table. So if you want to know more about this issue, it's not the threat of cats, it's the threat of humans to wildlife and birds. And you can read more about that at alleycat.org. And again, I would really ask you to go to Vox Felina, read more Anybody follow Vox Felina, Peter Wolf? And if you don't, I recommend you write this down and you go check out that blog. Now, here's what I'm going to end with, because this is what we've been doing at Alley Cat Allies for the last 2 weeks. We regularly take inquiries, Kayla does, at the Cat Help Desk, National Cat Help Desk at Alley Cat Allies, from people who have been issued citations. And the fines are usually, the citations are usually a trumped up thing that maybe they've left a paper plate out so they're littering from feeding the cats. Well, there is a gentleman, I want to show you this video, and this is what we've been working on because this came our way. Somebody told us about this man that's in jail. And it's right here in Texas, right up the street in Gainesville.
Well, the first time the prosecutor saw what I was doing and saw the law, she shook her head in disbelief and agreed with me. I wasn't going to let the cat go to bed on an empty stomach because they were hungry and nobody else cared. If I didn't, they would starve to death, literally. I found them. That's how I found them, hungry. Somebody's got to care. Just get somebody else that's got a heart and change the law. But I'll promise them every day, because I fed them every day for nearly 10 years.
Right after. It's the world's largest English publication and 89 million readers. And they've posted this on the Daily Mail. So this is now worldwide. And the very moment, within minutes after hearing from the Daily Mail, we heard from an editor with a Swiss magazine. And so now it's in Switzerland. So this is an issue that people can't believe. We had a donor call us. Anybody watching the news with the weather on the East Coast, I flew home for this big meeting, and I got home less than a week ago, and in Arlington, Virginia, and big weather forecast of the blizzard and the cold, and then we had snow, and DC, nobody knows what to do, so everybody goes home, and government can't work, nobody can work. It was 5 inches of snow. But anyway, so we were shut down on Tuesday, but one of the directors is 1 block away from the office. Poor her, because she had to go. Somebody has to take care of the 4 cats at the office, that's fine. But she ended up fielding all of the emails and inquiries and phone call, and a donor called us and said, I don't believe this. What's this idea of somebody being, going to jail for feeding cats? Come on, like we've embellished the story or something. God, sadly, this is, you don't have to do anything to this. This is real life, folks. And of course, we pointed out, the director pointed out to her where this was on CBS. CBS has covered this, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then she just couldn't believe. This is again, disbelief. So what we're doing there, and what we're doing, and we're going to continue to do this, but we need help, and this is pushing back on the status quo. As good as it is, here's Austin, and I've heard all of these speakers from Austin are the scrap women here, the Austin women that were earlier. It's such incredible programs that I'm hearing about in San Antonio and Washington, D.C., and the list goes on. But if we're 20–25% there, and I'm not that person that you saw in Flashback Friday or whatever that, Fallback Friday, that's not me anymore. We need to find that generation. It's up to us to find that. We have to find that group of people, those leaders, they're there, they exist. The Christines exist. Because we're going to go to Gainesville. Anybody from that area, from Gainesville here? You're from Gainesville. Anybody from around there? Because we have to go and we have to organize. This is something that has to be changed. I think the city knows that. I think they're very resistant. I think they have, sometimes it's just, they have a thing. This is like, obviously this guy's part of the problem, right? In their minds, which is wrong. So, you know, let me end with the fact that we're here tonight because some people stood up and said, well, this ain't right, and I don't know anything about it, and I'm not from the animal world, I'm not from the shelter world, but I can do something. You don't have to be from the shelter world. You don't have to be from the animal welfare world. You have to know that we can change society. It may feel like pushing a boulder up a hill and sliding back on it some days, but that's what we're here this weekend, and we're in it together. That's the other thing. We're doing this together. We're not alone, and that's what this David in Gainesville said. He just didn't know that anybody else cared. And literally, within a week, he's now on the Daily Mail. So this is something that I know we can change. I know we have a long ways to go. I know there's opposition. I know that there are people and groups that are putting out propaganda that are mistruths, but we can push back on that, and we have to continue. All of that we've gained, we have to fight to keep that and keep going. So let's give a big hand to Ellen and Ryan and Ann and Larry, the whole team that's put this conference on.